Welcome, friends, to Street Food Stories, where we dive into the sizzling, smoky world of food trucks, street food, and the diversity of flavors found on streets across America. We're your hosts, Craig and Jamie Joe, and invite you to join us as we chat with industry leaders and celebrate the spirit of street food that brings us all together. This is Street Food Stories. Hello again, friends. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Street Food Stories. I am Jamie Joe with the Tennessee Cobbler Company.
I'm Craig Joe with the Tennessee Cobbler Company.
And we're your hosts for Street Food Stories. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share, and follow along wherever you get your podcasts. We are now on all major podcasting platforms. Today, we have with us Daniel Yarzagrai from Chivanada and Pizza Assurda in Nashville. How are you, Daniel?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So we've known Daniel for quite a while. Yeah. Daniel was one of, you came along a little bit after we did, so you weren't too far behind.
Pretty close to the same time. Yeah.
I think we were the same graduating class pretty much.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We went to school together.
Exactly.
So, well, tell us your story. Tell us about Chivanada and how that came to be and what you're doing now.
Yeah. So Chivanada was a passion project that began being formulated when I was working in corporate America. I had a job in medical software in Franklin, great paying job. And by the end of it, I wasn't loving it so much. So I started kind of thinking about what I could do. And I spent some time in Colombia, visited my grandmother in Cartagena, and just got really inspired and kind of began formulating this idea of doing a food truck built from a school bus that emulated the country buses that you find in Colombia. They call them chivas, which means goat. And the reason they call them that is because they're nimble in the countryside, kind of like a goat, right? So I wanted to do a bus that emulated that, but kind of in a modern take, and do street food. And empanadas were kind of uniquely qualified to be a street food in Nashville because it was something that we could actually do here. There's a lot of Colombian street food that's really hard to replicate here because you can't get fresh fish right out of the Caribbean, right? Or you get fresh fruit right off a tree, like a fresh papaya, right? But empanadas could be done here and done well, and I figured I could do them with a fair degree of integrity and kind of bring something new to Nashville. And back then, this was, I think, 2016 when I started formulating this. There were no empanada trucks, especially in Nashville. So we started building a truck, and that was a whole kerfuffle of its own. That became its own nightmare for us. But we learned as we went. Yeah.
Well, did you start with a tent, or like were you serving other places like farmers markets or something to start, or did you your first service like the bus?
The first service was the bus. We just kind of full sent it, which was in hindsight an insane thing to do, but we didn't know any better, right?
We did the same thing.
Yeah, we were like, we're a truck. This is what we do. Yeah. So, we got the bus through a builder in Louisville, and he claimed to be the bus to food truck conversion guy. Turned out that build was awful. We had to redo pretty much 80% of it ourselves. And then we did our first family and friends service in our backyard just to test everything. And that was, it felt apocalyptic. It was insane. The entire bus's power system shut down 3 times. We figured out that the fans that he had put in the exhaust system had plastic fan blades. So the heat from the fryers going up into the exhaust system actually melted the fan blades into the motor. And we had an electrical fire where the fan blades were burning and it was shooting flames back towards our faces in the truck.
Oh my gosh.
And then we heard these 2 big bangs in the power system and the whole thing shut down. And I thought we were done. I thought there's no way this is going to, because I'd spent pretty much all our money at that point for the build out.
Yeah.
We were out of money. And at that point, this is going to sound crazy, but what really saved our build was this welder in Murfreesboro. And he was an ex-nuclear reactor builder. And he used to build nuclear reactors. So,
well.
Yeah.
If that tells anyone anything, it's someone that worked on nuclear reactors and they're now building food trucks, or they're helping with food trucks.
Yeah. He was just having fun. This was nothing for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he literally, he saved our build. He really did. He was like our Santa Claus. He literally looked like Santa Claus. Physically, he looked like Santa Claus. And he fixed our build and got us to where we could actually open the truck legally, because it was unusable after that first shift.
Oh my gosh. Well, CJ
man.
knows about those food truck fires.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know about that. That was very scary. especially as someone who never even used a fryer before, like used a commercial fryer.
Yeah.
I thought, is this how things go? Is this normal? I didn't know any better. It
I'm
was
so nervous.
so scary.
Go ahead, Craig.
I say our original truck had a fryer on it. Like
Yeah.
we don't use it anymore. We took it off like a couple of months afterwards because we didn't want to deal with it. So
They're a
yeah.
pain. They're a pain.
The propane in itself makes me nervous. So then you add the grease and I can't. I would be a nervous wreck. So I'm all for like the electric trucks and the
Yep.
no. Like
Those
hard.
fears are justified, honestly.
Yeah.
They really are. Yeah.
And Craig had that fire this year last year at the fair, and there were like flames coming out from under the bottom of the truck, and they're not far from where a propane tank sits. Like it was under the propane tank, like 2 foot to the left. So anyway,
Yeah, luckily somebody saw it. So
if I was there and saw flames like you did, I would freak out.
Thankfully, the good news about propane is it's very stable in liquid form, right? So once it turns into gas, you have problems. So the fact that in the tank it's liquid, that's our saving grace. But yeah, it's not safe. It's dangerous stuff.
Yeah, it definitely is. So you've grown though quite a bit. You from that first truck.
Yep.
How have you expanded Chivanada?
Yeah, so I want to say right after the pandemic, that's a whole story in and of itself, right? Surviving the pandemic, you guys know all about that. We were in a position to possibly open a second truck. You remember Don Miguel's acai juice truck? So we bought that truck from him, and that was what became our second truck. So we had it about 80% there. It already had a hood. It needed to be converted from a cold truck to a hot truck because he was only doing sandwiches and paninis, so he wasn't really doing like really hot food. So we had to put a second fan on top to draw more air through the vents for the fryers. Put some fryers in. It had a gas system, it had a propane system. Give it a fresh generator. No, we actually kept the generator. We just had to do tune-ups on it. So it was a fairly quick conversion to get the second truck on the road. Ran that for a couple of years, and then we ended up with this really interesting opportunity to open in Giada's Park, and that was really interesting. So I got wind that the local MLS team was getting its own stadium here. And I was just beyond ecstatic, as a Columbian guy. The idea of us having our own soccer stadium was just awesome. And I just knew that the Latin America community here would love to have something like our food in that stadium. So I actually cold emailed the team. That's how that conversation got started. They didn't reach out to me. I cold emailed them through their website. That's how that conversation started. And
awesome.
yeah, they were on board from day one. They were like, we love everything you do. We love your story. And when we got selected, the Tennessean ran a story, tasted all the different food options that were going to be there, and said we were their favorite ones. Now that really blew us up. That gave us a lot of initial press.
Nice.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Well, how is that scaling up from a truck to a stadium? Like you gotta feed so many more people. You gotta have so many more fryers. You gotta deal with so much more staff. Like, tell us about that little process.
Easier than you think. Food truck operators are uniquely trained to work concessions. So the difference between running a high volume event out of a truck and working a concession stall, they really are not that different. I would say it's about double to triple the volume. So instead of 2 fryers in a truck, we had 4, right? Instead of 1 person operating a register, we had 3 to 4. And we had 2 people packaging and 2 handing food out. So it was like running 2 or 3 trucks at the same time operationally. And we have a simple enough product that we were one of the most streamlined, efficient, operationally sound concepts in that stadium from day one, and continued to be so. We almost never sold out because we knew our numbers better. We always had our staffing levels right. So yeah, it was definitely a question of, can you do what you do in a food truck times 2 or times 3? And if you can do that, you really can do stadium concessions. It's not that different. Yeah.
What do you like best? I mean, I know you're a food trucker at heart, but what do you like best? Being on the truck or being at like a concession stall?
I like it all. What I like about the concession stall is getting to see all these different events that come through. Like Green Day came through, Pink came through, so a bunch of different concert acts we get to see. But then again, on the trucks, we get to see those too. Like we were running the truck at the New Year's event, and we got to catch Jelly Roll and Shibuya sound check right down, at a Bicentennial Park. So I would say for me, the real difference in the stall is the creature comforts, right?
Yeah.
So you're not
Yeah.
freezing cold or roasting hot like you are in a truck. Yeah.
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 You're working with, commercial grade everything all the time, and it's all
Mhm.
maintained by other people. You're not constantly having to
Mhm.
maintain all the equipment.
Mhm.
That part's pretty luxurious after you've worked in a truck for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds pretty good. Do you still have your permanent spot over in Woodland?
So we moved that recently. We moved over to Street Eats West, which you're familiar
Okay.
with.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. So we were there, and when they opened the bar underneath the basement east, they wanted a concept that was more American bar food. So they brought
Mhm.
in more like a wings truck, and it just made more
Mhm.
sense with what they were doing.
Okay.
So we kind of
Yeah.
parted ways, amicably. It was, it run its course,
Yeah.
and we moved the truck to Street Eats West, and we're open there right now, Thursday through Sunday, 11 to 9.
Yeah.
How's the
You like
Streets
the
West? The neighbor? Who all's over there right now?
So we got 3 trucks there right now. We've got Ahumados al Barril, which is a Colombian smoked meats truck. So great cross traffic there between our truck and his truck, right? Doing different Colombian styles of food.
Mhm.
There is a Mexican truck just doing like traditional Mexican food. And then there's our truck. And there was a Honduran truck that recently left, and we're looking to backfill them with another truck here soon.
Nice.
So, on top of having all of those locations and trucks and things, you recently opened a second concept called
Yes,
Pizza Assurda.
that's right. That's
So,
right.
tell me a little bit about that. Why pizza? Where that came from?
Yeah. So Pizza Assurda is a traditional Neapolitan pizza truck, and it came really from being in the business, right? So I remember back 2018 when we launched, there was just fantastic Neapolitan pizza available from Il Forno, right? Edgy out there.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
had Cranky's. Cranky's was doing great pizza. And then later on, you had Soft Hands. So you had a bunch of really great pizza trucks. And one by one, they all either went brick and mortar or sold the truck and got out of the business. And at that same time, I was starting to mess around with the home pizza ovens that came on the market, your Unis, your Gosni's,
Mhm.
just in my backyard. And I got to the point where I developed something that I thought was really unique and really special with our dough fermentation process. Really was kind of what made ours unique. So what we do is 100% pre-ferment dough, and that creates a really flavorful, airy Neapolitan dough that's very traditional, but you can tell at the same time there's something slightly different going on here, right? So it's just a very subtle difference, but it's very,
Mhm.
very good. So that was kind of what we brought that was unique to it was this 100% pre-ferment dough process, all imported Italian flour. And I ended up with another unique situation where BJ was looking to lease trucks, right? And I was like, we can test this in a leased truck and see if it's something we can take over, and then eventually kind of bring to full fruition.
Mhm.
So we leased the truck at first from him for a couple of months, and then we liked where it was going, and then we bought out the truck from him just recently. So yeah, now we own the truck outright, and it's been fantastic. So our biggest event with that truck to date was the New Year's event downtown.
Oh, yeah.
We did 350 pizzas in like 7
Oh wow.
hours. It was insane.
Wow.
Like the stack of empty dough boxes when we were done was taller than my head by like a foot. It was insane. And
Yeah.
we turned
That's
that around in
awesome.
2 days. MGC Pizza, Chris, I think is his name.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was
I think I've
supposed to
heard
be
of
there. Yeah, he was supposed to be there, and he didn't get his fire permit in time. So he calls me 48 hours before it's supposed to happen and says, "Hey, can you take over for me?" And yeah, so we pulled
Nice.
together, making the dough, buying all those ingredients, getting the staff, and we already had a lunch gig on the books that day. So we ended up running a
Oh,
double. Yeah, we
yeah.
were tired for 3 days after that. We were just exhausted.
Which that's just chaos. But that's part of the fun. Like, I don't know if you
It
guys are the
totally
same way,
is.
but I know when me and Craig are doing something and it's like CMA Fest and it's just wild and a crazy week. And I'm like, I'm so stressed, I'm so exhausted. I love those weeks.
Yeah.
Those are the most fun weeks for food trucking.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings me to my next question. What is the most challenging aspect that you found in running two different concepts?
Yeah. So running 2 different concepts as of right now has been fairly straightforward because we've really streamlined Chivanada,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
That's already got its processes, its systems, everything smooth.
It almost runs itself. Like almost. Yeah.
In a lot of ways, it kind of runs
Mhm.
itself now, right? So Z is fantastic running
Mhm.
that truck. We've got a process for making sure all the empanadas that we need for all our different things are made every week. So every Monday we make all the empanadas, right? We make a couple of thousand of them, and then we sell them throughout the week. And then with the pizza truck, it's a little more involved actually because we actually have to make dough every 2 days, right? Because it has to be ready to go, and dough doesn't have a very long shelf life. Empanadas have a much longer shelf life once they're made. So the pizza truck is actually a little more involved. But the nice thing is it's a very simple process in the truck, right? So we have two Gosney Arc XL ovens in there, and we can make a pizza every 90 seconds, so that part's really great. Yeah.
Really good turnaround.
Yeah, it's really great. Yeah, Neapolitan
And
pizza is specifically suited for food trucking, in my opinion.
And then we also didn't mention you're in Geodis Park, but you're also in the stadium down in Birmingham too. Are you still down there?
Yeah. So we have a concession trailer in Huntsville, and that was another one of those like last minute unique opportunities that kind of popped up. I think it was either last year or year before last. I can't remember. The MLS team here was starting its minor league affiliate, right? And they chose Huntsville for that market, for that team. They bought a AAA ballpark. They bought Joe Davis Stadium down there in Huntsville. And it was a defunct AAA ballpark, turned it into a soccer stadium. But one of the problems they had is this stadium seats 5,500 people, and they had 3 concession stands in it. That's a problem, because if even half those people try to eat, like, there's just no way. So they asked us if there was anything we could do to help. And I said, well, I have no crew down there. I have no people, but I could theoretically build out a concession trailer that's branded as ours, put it in there, and then we will provide you with the empanadas, and then you guys run it using our SOPs, our standard operating procedures, which we provided them. And that went really, really well. It was very smooth. I stayed down for the first 2 games to train the team, make sure that they had our processes, and they figured it out really quickly. It wasn't a difficult product to execute, which is probably part of the reason why it worked so well. If it had been a trickier product, it probably wouldn't have worked. But by the time they get to cooking our empanadas in a fryer, all the hard work has already been done to make sure that product is going to turn out the same every single time. So we were really blessed to have a product that works like that, because a lot of times trying to port over a food truck concept to another market with new people, it just doesn't work. And also the fact that they're trained hospitality people, right? So they're not brand new people. They've worked in hospitality in some capacity, concessions before this. Worked out really, really well.
Nice.
Yeah. You also recently, I want to touch on this. So we deal with a lot of, regulations in Tennessee. And you were actually vice president of the Food Truck Association when I was president. So we got to work together on some legislation, getting a fire permit passed for Tennessee. But recently you were able to sue a municipality over some of their crazy food truck regulations. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So that was an interesting journey. I did not kind of see where that was going. Any food trucker in the Nashville area, at least at that time, knew that Mount Juliet was kind of the most anti-food truck municipality, right? They were the most aggressive with trying to keep us out.
Real quick, I want to jump in real quick and just for listeners that aren't familiar with Tennessee regulations. In the state of Tennessee, we have to have a food truck permit and a fire permit for every municipality in which we serve. So if we're in Nashville, we have to have their fire permit, their food truck permit. If we go to Franklin, fire permit, food truck permit, Brentwood, fire. So it's very redundant. Every city that we go to, and up here when you have a major city and then these, smaller suburbs around it, that becomes very redundant because you're getting 10, 15 food truck permits every year, and they're all different. They all come with a different set of rules. They all come with a different price fee, and which brings us back to Mount Juliet and the structure of their permit. Yeah.
So Mount Juliet had the most egregious process where you paid a daily permit of, I think it was $100, which is usually a day. Exactly. A day. And that was equivalent to most other municipalities' yearly fee, right?
For example, like Brentwood was like $50 a year or something like that.
But it wasn't just a day. It was only for those outside of Mount Juliet.
Exactly. If you were a truck coming from outside Mount Juliet, you had to pull these temporary event permits, and they capped it at 3 per year. So you couldn't go back there more than 3 times a year for anything. And the hypocrisy of it all really showed during COVID, because they lifted this whole process for 90 days because they needed our help. When they had tornadoes come through, they lifted those again because they needed our help, right, as food truckers. So anytime it was convenient for us to serve for their purposes, they would just do away with these regulations, and then they would just put them back in place.
Lends to the thought of why they're there to begin with.
Exactly. So we worked with the Beacon Institute, and they sued the city of Mount Juliet on our behalf on a constitutional challenge, challenging via the Tennessee state constitution that it violated a clause in there that basically said you have a right to earn a living. And they were able to get that changed so quickly. It was mind-blowing. Like, it was less than 2 weeks, I think, after that suit was done, that the whole thing was just, the whole process was completely different. They had a normal permitting process. They had a normal system, just like every other municipality. And it really did highlight how food trucks are always, at all times, on the fringe of getting pushed out of legality. It doesn't matter. We always have had to keep fighting, whether it's the state legislature, whether it's local, whether it's the fire department, whether it's health department. We get inspected more than most restaurants that I know, to be honest. Like, I've seen, we get inspected 3 to 4 times a year minimum.
Almost, every event, you're a big event you're at, they're going to come by and look at you. I mean,
and when these
even
permits,
though we have a score already,
even though we've been inspected sometimes 3 days ago. You pull up to an event and that inspector's there to re-inspect everything. So the idea that we're some kind of like fly-by-night, less than clean operation is just dated, right? And I think most people in the general public know that, but the regulators seem to think that we're some kind of cash cow that they can just continue to tack fees onto, kind of the same way that event planners and promoters see us as well. They see us as kind of a cash cow that can continually drain through high event fee pricing, which is
fees keep going up.
Every year.
I mean, it's hard too, because it's so, I was just talking to Crystal from the Grilled Cheesery, and we were talking about how our experience during the Food Truck Association, just led me to learn how nuanced the industry is, though. Like, there's not, everyone's not the same. And while we can all agree that there are those that are less than stellar, they do not, maintain equipment or anything like they should. And we understand that you need regulations for that. I think it's just this education, like a lack of education, that we're constantly having to educate the legislators and the rule makers that we're not all bad. We're not all like that. Now, while we do welcome smart regulation, I think it's just over-regulation that's the problem. And so it's hard to, to navigate all of it. But
and like you said,
regulate us.
They do. And like you said, it's not like we have been anti-regulation. We realize that we need to have smart regulation in place that protects the safety of the public from fire hazard, health hazard, all that stuff, right? So like we're not anti-regulation, but we just want to be sure that doesn't go overboard and into into the point of regulating us out of existence, which has always been a threat.
I think that's a lot of their points, is like they're trying to regulate us out of it, like so we can't operate there if they don't want us there,
Always,
Well, and then it turns into protectionist. It's very protectionist. They're worried about, their brick and mortars, and they're like, but you can't do that. Like you can't protect, or pick and choose who gets to make a living in America.
Right.
That's not how it operates. And I understand, because I've led a Main Street organization before, and when you want to protect the economic interests of your locals and things, 100% totally get that. But I just think it's targeting the wrong group. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the wrong way to go about it, kind of thing. But so always down for a good food truck fight. For some legislation.
Want to be done.
Yeah.
Want to be done. I wish we could get a statewide food truck permit. So that would be awesome.
We're headed there, I hope, in the future.
Fingers crossed.
That's right.
So do you have any advice for those that are wanting to grow their food truck? Maybe they have a single food truck unit and they want to expand into a second one, or go into stadiums or permanent locations. What's your advice for those wanting to expand?
Yeah, I would say, I've made some mistakes in that process, right? So I would say I could teach them more from my mistakes than my successes. So here's what I would tell them. Be extremely aware of your numbers, right? If you can, do as much with cash as you can. Avoid debt as much as possible. If you do need to use debt, be sure that it is collateralized, it's secured, it's low interest, it's not in your personal name, it's in the business's name, right? So be sure if you do use debt that it's smart debt, that it's not personally guaranteed high interest stuff. I've made those mistakes in the past when I couldn't get capital for things, and I took on some of that lower quality debt, and it was very, very difficult to pay off. So that's what I would say is be very aware of your numbers, right? Some of these bigger deals don't necessarily pencil, right? So if you look at the soccer stadium, some of those numbers there don't necessarily make sense financially. They do make sense if you're trying to build a brand and you're trying to expand your reach, right? But if you're trying to make money from some of those bigger things, sometimes the numbers don't really pencil. For example, the soccer stadium, you may pay 30% in commissions to serve there, on top of a sponsorship that might be anywhere from 25 to 50K a year, right? So you may not actually, it may not be profitable. So you have to decide, is this something I want to do purely for exposure, right? To build my brand, right? Or is it something I need to make money on, right? So just be sure you really model your numbers out carefully and be very careful with your debt stack to be sure that it's not going to drown you over time.
Yep, that's really good advice for someone wanting to expand. Like sometimes expanding too fast could
That can
be
kill you.
like, yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah, we definitely expanded in hindsight a little quicker than we should have, right? We should have slowed down just a little bit, taken our time. It's hard because these opportunities, they flash by you really quickly. And so you're trying to decide, do I grab it and figure it out afterward? Or do we kind of take a more slow and steady approach with a more methodical plan? And I think there's valid reasons to do both. But I would say in hindsight, just make sure you really model the numbers out very carefully.
And I would say just do that food truck for a few years first. Like, try to do that as long as you can. And then, I don't know. I'm a chicken, though. When it comes to certain growth things, I'm like, oh, I don't know. I'm not a huge risk taker. I know we've had this conversation before.
Right.
I'm not the biggest risk taker. Craig's, I don't know. I'm the dreamer and the big idea, like idea person.
Right.
And then Craig brings me to reality. And then when it's time for us to grow as a food truck or a company, Craig has the ideas and he's like, let's do this. And I'm like, oh, no. Let's just play it safe. So we go back and forth all the time. Should we do this? Should we do that? Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
so,
I think it's good to have those checks and balances because it's a lot of times I'm just like, I just do it. And then my team goes, they kind of go, Daniel, really? And I'm like, we're doing it. It's too late. I already made the decision. Yeah. So having those checks and balances and decision making can actually be a really good thing, I think. But yeah, what's next for us? Yeah. So we're in the process right now of kind of expanding our wholesale program. So we do a lot of wholesale empanada sales now. That's kind of been one of our biggest growth sectors. And I kind of think that's what's going to carry Chivanada into the future is the wholesale aspect of things. So we currently sell our empanadas to Pearl Diver in East Nashville. We sell them to the Bandbox in the Sound Stadium. We sell them occasionally to Nissan Stadium, a couple others, right? And we've seen a lot of real potential there. So we've actually bought a fully automated manufacturing line that we are in the process of spinning up in Chattanooga. So that we'll be able to make more empanadas at a faster rate with more stable labor costs. So that's kind of where we're growing next.
That cuts down on your product cost too, right? So you can buy in huge amounts or like bulk.
Exactly.
Essentially, so.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think the next thing for us is that.
We're in the same, but because we were both working at a Citizen's Kitchen, and those of you know are not familiar with Citizen's Kitchen, it's pretty small.
Yeah.
If you want to expand, there's really not any space to expand inside a Citizen's Kitchen.
Totally.
That commissary. So
it's a commissary. Yeah, it's just a local commissary here, and they're great. It's just there's a lot of vendors that use Citizens because they're one of the few. There's 3 commissaries, maybe
there's like
2
3
in Nashville.
Yeah.
And so everyone flocks to Citizens, and it's packed. So it's hard if like Craig said, if we want to expand or bring in bulk, like we've tried to bring in like pallets of stuff before because it's cheaper to buy like pallets of sugar or and there's just not enough space. So that would benefit us to have like a brick and mortar so that we could really have a stock room kind of thing.
We've done the same
also
thing
in the airport. You're selling this, y'all doing that still?
Yeah, that's been paused. Not because of us, but because of the constraints of working in the airport. So the stall that we sell through in the airport had issues with putting a hot box out there, right, out on the counter, so they could hold some finished product. And as a result, it was just too intensive to fry everything to order without a way to hot hold it. And so they've kind of shelved it for now until they get the permissions to put that hot box in place. And
Airport's
believe it,
a whole nother ball game right there. You gotta go through TSA and stuff, and there's
exactly.
yeah.
All right, so we're almost finished, Daniel. I got one more question for you, and then we're going to close this thing out. If you could open a food truck anywhere in the world, where would it be and why? And you can't say Colombia.
Okay, all right, not Colombia. That's a great question. Yeah, because that was obviously going to be my answer. You know what? I would actually like to open a truck somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, just because I want to hang out there for a little bit. So I would probably do like maybe Washington State, right?
Oh, yeah. It's beautiful.
Somewhere there. Yeah, just somewhere where I could experience a slightly different climate and lifestyle for a little bit, and just a different trucking culture, but not California. I love California, but I would rather truck somewhere farther north, like maybe Portland or Seattle or something like
Would
that.
you do
or Washington State.
Chivanada or like empanadas, or would you do pizza or just something totally different?
I have no idea, because we have a couple other concepts in our back pocket, so we'll see.
Oh, there you go.
We have a drink concept that you might see in the future. We'll see.
Fun, exciting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Daniel, for joining us today. We appreciate you taking time out of your extremely busy schedule to sit down and chat with us on Street Food Stories. For those of you listening, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share these podcasts. You can now find them wherever you listen to podcasts nationwide on all of the main podcasting platforms. So check us out on there, and we will see you guys next time. Keep on trucking, y'all.